Good morning, everyone, and welcome in to a very excited episode of the LEGO Zelda Custom Set Showcase, where today we'll be taking a look at Z number 0025, the dungeon expansion for this wave to be compatible with the Fire Sanctuary and Goma's Nest with 1040 pieces. It's the Shadow Temple. And I was not excited to do this one, but as soon as I sat down and brainstormed ideas, this may be the funnest of the temples. That's not a word, but this is the most fun play features in a temple I could possibly have done. I literally have a list of 6 that I still haven't done. But anyway, we've got a lot to get through, so I've got to try and not waffle today. But anyway, this is set number Z025, the Shadow Temple for ages 8 plus, with 1040 pieces, retailing for 80 Great British pounds, with 4 minifigures and possibly an extra 3 brick-built figures, depending on how you view it. And I'll explain more on that when we get to the minifigures. But you can see our lovely little bit of box art set in the opening room of the Shadow Temple with the dungeon sprawled out, and it does look a bit confusing currently. So we will unravel all of that together, read it on the side of the box art, and let's go into the description. Z0025. Enter the depths of Hyrule's spooky history in the latest addition to the dungeon building system. Containing over 1,000 LEGO elements, the Shadow Temple construction set includes 6 rooms to add to your ever-growing and rearrangeable dungeon. Unique to this one in particular is the inclusion of roller coaster track elements to let your dungeon spread in different directions. Face off against Bongo Bongo to claim the coveted Shadow Medallion, and don't forget to avoid traps, solve puzzles, and look for treasure along the way. Okay, let's get into it. We have our box art up nice and close, and it is the 70 long box used on Hogwarts Express and other sets like that. And here is the model from the front of the box shot, and it's still going to look very confusing, and that is because this image here has been slightly modified to make such a long and sprawling dungeon look better on the front of a box. But I'll show you what it actually looks like in a minute. So inside our box, we get 9 numbered bags and an instruction manual. And inside our instruction manual, we see what all the bags build. So bag 1, you get the Stalfos minifigure, the Boat of Souls, and the entrance gateway. In bag 2, you get the Redead and the Cursed Bubble, and another section of the dungeon, as well as the Crypt section. In section 3, you get Dead Hand, as well as Dead Hand's kind of room. Section 4, or bag 4 even, builds up the start of the next dungeon segment. And bag 5 gives you Link and finishes off that dungeon segment, revealing it as the Stone Umbrella segment. Bag 6 starts the Bongo Bongo room. And bag 7 you actually get to build Bongo Bongo. Bag 8 does all of the train platforms. And bag 9 finishes us off with train turntable and just sort of the rest of the connectors for the set. So here is the set in its ideal layout. This is the one that would be like how you'd set it up at the back of the manual. And you can see that we've got 4 major sections on 4 ends of train track connected with something in the middle. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through it section by section. I'll explain all the play features, explain how the train works, and I'll show you the figures up close. So section 1 is True Sight. And given all of these names, I don't know if these would be the real names, but this section revolves around the Lens of Truth, and you may recognize this sort of face symbol, and if you push on the face, you'd go through the wall. So, looking at the play feature, it's flat, and then you push a minifigure through, and it hinges up, allowing you to pass. As for other details, you've got a chain hanging off the side and then skulls on posts. Now the thing with these dungeon sets is because playability and size is so important, a lot of extra details get lost, so whether there'd be stickers or extra vines or stuff hanging, it depends on where you want to go with the budget, but this was decidedly not the biggest set of the wave. Now this face is also clearly, whole section in fact is even based off the entrance to the Shadow Temple where you have to run through the wall with the Lens of Truth. And behind that wall leads to the first of the 4 stations and starts us on our journey. Now obviously this isn't accurate, but here we get on of our boat, which will take us across, and this is the Shadow Ferry. Taking inspiration from Ocarina of Time, this is where you would put your Stalfos minifigure, and then as you ride your boat around the roller coaster track, Link has to fight your Stalfos on the back of the ship, just like in Ocarina of Time. And there we go, there's the side-by-side comparison of the Shadow Ferries, and you can see it's still got that shrunken minifigure representing the ferryman on the front of the boat. He's got his bells which he can ring, and that would have some facial print, but obviously Studio doesn't let me do that. Just like this boat as well, we have the skull on the back of the boat and the little raised up bit at the back. But the most important thing was to have lots of studs for minifigures to stand on and fight on. Talking about the train track though, you can see that it's fairly expansive. There seems to be 2 major loops, but there's a turntable to allow you to access all of the loops. The Shadow Ferry can go from one to the other and dock at one of 4 stations, which can be seen on the right. Here are all the elements that make up just the track section. As I talked about before, and we'll take a look at in a minute, you've got this roundabout-like section, the boat itself, 5 pieces of straight, not including the ones in the stations, 3 curves, some supports, some tiles, and then the 4 stations like I've mentioned. 1 for the start, 2 with these brown arches, and 1 with a dock on each side. As for the roundabout, it's an almost connected piece of track that can rotate freely on a turntable. We also have 2 hooded cloaked figures, which I guess could count as minifigures, holding scythes, sort of pseudo-representing this room from Ocarina of Time where you have to collect the silver rupees, except for this time they're attacking the Shadow Ferry. I know it doesn't make much sense, but I thought it was a nice little decoration for the roundabout and also an easy turning handle, so I really like that inclusion. For those 3 other stations that I mentioned, you've got the one where you can disembark on both sides. I see this being like where the Shadow Ferry starts in the game, not in this setup. And then you've got these 2 simple builds for those wooden torture frames that hang in the bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple. Section number 3, Watch Out. A little play on Navi's words there. And this is just a simple section of dungeon that I believe would have some stickers on the back wall to represent some like Brock work and stuff, but this section is really just an amalgamation of things. Obviously you can see the Wallmaster hanging up and a chain. The other feature that you may not have noticed is the gap in the floor, and if you pull this lever around the back backwards and forwards, the bubble on the transparent rod will swing backwards and forwards like it's flying around in a circle. My mind goes back to that room in the Spirit Temple. However, obviously this is the Shadow Temple, but I thought it was a nice inclusion to put the green bubble from the bottom of the well down here, rocking backwards and forwards, so you have to jump past him to get further. But then, of course, once you get past him, the Wallmaster might fall on you. You can see there's a little lever at the top that, when pulled out, disconnects the Wallmaster, and he will drop straight down on Link and jump him, or hit him into the bubble, or something, and then you have to fight it. But it's a nice extra inclusion of a creature. The only thing I'll mention about that Wallmaster is the new Monkey Kid spider leg pieces would work perfectly for Wallmaster fingers. Section number 4, the Crip. So after making it past the Wallmaster, you're greeted with the Crip. And as you can see here, there are 2 sarcophagus. One is empty and would have the key that the skeleton is holding, and the other has a redead. So pushing the top of the coffins from the back will allow the redead to be revealed, kind of jump scaring Link is the sort of idea there. So they're nice and, the walls are nice and securely held in place, but the coffins aren't, meaning that they can easily be pushed onto Link to kind of just like, it's a hand-pushed action feature, it doesn't need too much explanation. But then you've got your redead, which you can play scare Link, and then there's the key for the next section of the dungeon, even though it's the boss key, I guess. Anyway, this particular room is sort of inspired by, in the bottom of the well, that crypt room where there are redeads inside coffins. However, I suppose it takes more inspiration from Wind Waker in that regard. Particularly the Earth Temple, where the redeads are in coffins behind walls, and then they burst out when you roll past them. So lots of different inspirations from lots of different games in this one, which is really cool, to be honest. But let's keep going. Section 5 is Dead Hand section. And yet again, there is another play feature here, where you step in one of his hands and Dead Hand rises up out of the ground ready to attack you. So obviously this was particularly difficult to implement because the hands of Dead Hand stick up vertically, and therefore to actually grab Link they need to be one in the ground. So I've made this new canonical hand, I guess, that sits in the floor, and then when Link gets pushed into it, just like in the Rise of Voldemort Harry Potter set, Dead Hand pops up and the treasure chest gets flung backwards, so you can't actually get what's inside, so you can't get the boss key. So there's green down below to represent that poisonous liquid in the bottom of the well. the bottom of the well. And the dead hand hands are made out of red bars in a new colour and candlestick pieces from Harry Potter, which honestly look great. And the dead hand minifigure is just hidden underneath there, so that when Link trips on the claw hand, it flings backwards, dead hand comes up, and starts his gnawing. And obviously, this room needs no introduction, as it is the eponymous Scary Nightmare, which is Dead Hand. Section 6 belongs to the Stone Umbrella, and this is the physically biggest of the sections. First thing to mention is that there are 2 levers on the back which allow these stone crushers to move up and down. So I'm going to walk you through the sequence for this room, because obviously a crusher would crush Link, that's play feature number 1. But if Link starts off along the left, and we raise the crusher and lower the other crusher, he can walk underneath the other one. He can then jump up onto the lowered crusher over the poison water, which he can't cross, rise up on top of it, and then jump back onto the other lowered one, which for some reason he couldn't do initially, and then ride it up to the top to walk along this gantry over the poison swamp and down over the other side of the metal bars to get to the boss room. Now, this room is based off another one in Ocarina of Time, more specifically the one which I have dubbed Stone Umbrella, where you are tasked with pushing a block underneath some spiked platforms. But of course, because this is Lego and you have full 3D movement and there's no real barricades to what you can do, I wanted to make a puzzle that could be tackled in multiple ways depending on how the child wanted. So you could just lower down the first crusher and let Link ride it up. You could lower down the second crusher and let him scale the bars. You could just crush Link. That's your other option. But I've just talked about one of the more complicated solutions to share that with you guys. However, I like it. I really do. I think this is a really clever idea for a room. And there's all those spiky teeth underneath those 2 platforms, which is a lot of pieces. Section 7 is probably the best, and it is Bongo Bongo, and you guys know that I love to do special things with the bosses in these dungeon sets, and this one is no different. So starting off, we have the boss door, which has no keyhole, but it can be slid open through a lever around the back, and that lets you into Bongo Bongo, whose main feature, just like the pillars from before, is a squash feature. You can see that he is mounted onto 2 Technic beams, which have stoppers at the bottom and stoppers at the top, and from behind you can pull on these plates to raise each hand up and down in free motion. There's no latch because you don't really need to, the movement isn't great, but it's enough to squash an unsuspecting Link. And this is obviously what our Phantom Shadow Beast would look like without all of his supports, and I really do think this one looks really good. The Petal Police in black works magnificent wonders for the character. But I wouldn't be a boss without a feature, and Bongo Bongo's hands are no different. Each of his fingers, all 5 of them, can be sliced off with a sword. They're all weakly connected to sort of represent his health, I guess. So the job of Link coming in here is to slice off all 10 fingers, and then he can get the Shadow Medallion, and Bongo Bongo can die. And one last feature I suppose to point out that is that the Shadow Medallion appears, so it's hidden nicely behind the back, and once you've knocked off all 10 fingers, you just flick it up, and it's there to be claimed, kind of like the warp portal, I guess. Right, moving on to the figures, and then we need to combine the dungeon sets together. First up, we have, yet again, Link from Twilight Princess. Now, we saw this guy a couple of weeks ago in the Prince Rallis Wagon escape set, but here he is again, exact same variant, muted colours, round blue eyes, Series 20 minifigure sword, and the Hylian shield from Last Wave. Next up, though, we have an exclusive figure, being Dead Hand. And there's a couple of interesting things to point out here. These appendages are the ones from his actual section. I just brought them in with the image because I thought they looked cooler. So he has his appendages, a simple white dress piece with some smudged red printing, a torso with some smudged red printing. He's basically a fully white character, and then an absolutely terrifying head, because the thing about Dead Hand is he really doesn't fit a minifigure shape. However, without using one of the Pythor headpieces or like making my own from Ninjago, I decided to keep him like this. However, to make his hands more pointy and disturbing, I took these elves triangular pieces, recoloured them in dark red, and stuck them on his hands. Next up we have the Redead from Ocarina of Time, and while the printing here and the design for this figure is completely my own, the idea to use this particular helmet for a Redead comes from Noah R's CMS series, which I have watched since last wave, which was an incredible video by the way, you should check that out. But here we have our Redead with it is brown old Iron Man helmet, some simple printing and some absolutely terrifying teeth, as well as a ribcage using the negative space as another brown colour shade, some vein printing across the waist, no printed arms, and then some disgusting looking toes down the bottom. Really incredible idea to use this piece, really love the figure, I love this one a lot actually. Really hope he could appear in another set someday. Next up, we have the Stalfos from Ocarina of Time, which has also become another one of my favourite figures. He is using the headpiece from, I believe it's the Skullkin from Ninjago Series 1, recoloured into a white or tan, depending on how you want to view it. I think we'll go with white, and with some pearl gold printing around the top, as well as this lovely little facial expression, which I think suits the Stalfos amazingly. The white torso contains a bit of negative space down the bottom, but has some simple ribcage lining, and the dual moulded arms are top white and bottom teal, with a bit of red and some silver on the left pauldron shoulder. He is bringing back warm bronze as a colour that was previously used with the Anacondri? Ninjago Series 11, Asphera's army had warm bronze weapons, and that is the same here with a warm bronze sword, warm bronze colours, and then a shield which is printed white on warm bronze gold. As for his legs, we have dual moulded legs ending in teal boots and with white and teal in the top half, and he has a red belt. And honestly, I love this figure. He looks so much like the real thing to me. Yeah, no, he genuinely might be one of my favourites from Wave 2. I'll leave it at that for now. We'll go in more depth in the figure video at the end of this wave. However, the only thing I should mention is that the sword from the Rare and the Last Dragon sets revealed recently could possibly work as a more accurate Stalfos sword in warm bronze. Next up, we have Bongo Bongo with his two hands and his head. Now, this is a bit of a damaged figure, I guess, because you've got giant holes in the middle of his hands, he comes attached to a massive frame, he can't be supported, and he doesn't have his big body. But for a Legoized version that's supposed to be playable and is only a very small part of an otherwise big set, I think this isn't a bad representation, and I'm really pleased that the hands actually came out like hands instead of just sausages on a stick, and I'm also really pleased I came up with a play feature to actually deal damage to the boss, just like the Magmarmane from the Fire Sanctuary. And there you go, that's what I mean about his arms actually not existing in this model. Next we have the Wallmaster. I'll leave this one brief as well, but he has 5 fingers in a claw-like shape. If in the future I would like to change these claws out for the Monkey Kid spider leg piece in black, as I think it just looks a bit more like Wallmaster fingers. But you've also got the stub of the disembodied hand at the top, and just around the back you can't really see it, but there's a Technic hole for him to attach to his wall drop piece. And there's some debate over the colour, but honestly I think it's probably just lighting, and I think I'll stick with black. Next up we have the green bubble from Ocarina of Time, seen in the bottom of the well, and you can see him here on screen, and a couple of liberties were taken here. The eyes are green, yes, and the Skullkin head has been reused with a different shaped facial expression, more octagonal, and obviously some green eyes. And he's got a clip round the back for the 2 wings, which instead of including him in a giant piece of fire, I decided to make the wings the colour of the flames, and I think this works really well. And if there was a custom moulded headpiece, maybe this is the way to go for Keese as well. Either way, nice build, I like him a lot actually. I think the Skullkin face is just brilliant for all the skeletons in Zelda. But let's move on. So before we go and take a look at Shadow Temple in Studio, I thought it was important to bring in the other dungeon sets and compare what they look like all as one combined model. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I designed dungeon sets in my custom Wave 1, particularly one based off the Deku Tree from Ocarina of Time and the Fire Sanctuary from Skyward Sword. So this makes dungeon number 3 of which the whole concept of them is to combine them and rearrange them in different orders. So every room has a unique play feature from a different temple, but for children's creativity, just like the Mario courses, you can rearrange them and stick them together. So taking a close-up look at this first little section, we can see that we have the Fire Sanctuary's entrance leading into the Goma's Nest puzzle with the slingshot, which leads into the green bubble and wallmaster room, which leads through the Eye of Truth door, which leads into the Magmame mini boss, which then explodes. You open the door, get on the Shadow Ferry, and then choose which direction you go. You can either go up north to face Goma, cross the lava river, blow up the bombable wall, and visit the Redead in the crypt, or you could go the other two ways and visit the Stone Umbrella room and then the Girahim boss at the back, or come down south, rescue the Mogma, fight Dead Hand, and then open the door to Bongo Bongo in the back. So you can really see it start to develop, and for every dungeon boss room there's really an equivalent puzzle room, so I really like that. And there's just lots of play features. It's just so fun when seeing all of these different concepts from the games come together, and there were so many in the Shadow Temple which I wish I could have done. Bombable walls, turning skies, the falling guillotines, hold the boot puzzles, so much extra stuff. But you can't have it all. So let's move over to Studio and take a closer look at the actual model. So here in Studio, we're starting off at the Eye of Sight gate, and you can see that this thing does sprawl pretty far, because Roller Coaster Track is surprisingly big. So there's not really huge that I didn't mention in all the images. However, there are a couple of different angles I want to give you. Firstly, you can see the side of the Shadow Ferry down here, and it's just one of those normal roller coaster cars underneath there. And then I managed to insert this skeleton head into the back to represent that part of the Shadow Ferry. Now, one thing I should have mentioned a lot earlier is this hairpiece is a stand-in for the Palpatine hood piece from not Rise of Skywalker, but the new Palpatine hood piece that doesn't close. And that would be in dark red, and there'd also be Shadow Ferry printing. Anyway, so following the track round to the roundabout, you can see that there would be no printing on these guys bar their skeleton faces, which would probably be the same as the Shadow Ferries, but this thing can freely rotate on a turntable. Heading over to the left, which is the next stop, you can see the torture frame in position, as well as the lever which controls how the bubble moves backwards and forwards. It's one of the few mechanisms I was confident in building in Studio. And then you can also see this random skeleton with gold key, as well as the two sarcophagi. Moving over to the Dead Hand room, because that key is basically pointless, you can see here to be the chest with the boss key. You can see the poisonous water from the bottom of the well, as well as the Dead Hand arms, and here's the trapdoor that Dead Hand would fling up. So as a better demonstration, Link would land in here. This would slide into the swamp, which triggers the Dead Hand to rise up and flip up like that. Moving over to the last segment though, again there's not too much to share. You can see the activation levers around the back, as well as the underside of the crushers. Originally there were spikes under those, but they were just draining so many pieces that I couldn't. You can see a bit better what I mean by this metal grate that's blocking you, and you sort of get a better idea about this whole it's blocked past crush. It's just fun for children really. I think I've done an alright job there. You can also see the ladder that allows you to get back down off the gantry and then down in front of the boss door, which has its activation lever down here. It's just a 1x6x5 panel. And then onto the Bongo Bongo arena, which I wish could have been circular or drum-shaped or more interesting. I know, but pieces were running out. It was already bigger than I wanted it to be. I mean, I was glad to give it the extra pieces, but you can see our Shadow Medallion down in the back and this amazing Bongo Bongo build, which I am really, really proud of. Yeah, you can see those levers around the back. It's just some simple hinge building, nice and strong with some technique on the inside. And then each of these 10 fingers then pops off, and that's how you're dealing your damage. Honestly, probably the best boss encounter that I've come up with. But anyway, we've taken a look at the dungeon combined, we've taken a look at the figures, we've also taken a look at just the dungeon. So let's go back and wrap up for the day. So that's going to do it for Z0025, the Shadow Temple, with an amazing selection of figures and a temple that came out so much better than I thought. At the start of this process, just like the ice enemies, I thought it was going to be really hard. I wasn't too keen on the Shadow Temple in the first place, but when I did my research, I stumbled across so many ideas for the temple, and so many figure ideas as well. Like, I could have done so much more with the figure selection, like a second Stalfos even just as a starter. But in the end, I produced one of my favourite builds, though I really hope to see them tackle something similar, just like with the Lizalfos Battle Pack. I really hope that they do something in this vein. And not only that, I really like the figures in the end as well. Not only the amazing Redead, but the Stalfos in particular shines out to me as one of my favourite figures that I've drawn in a long time. And top it off with the new Twilight Princess Link variant, and it's pretty good. But anyway, I said I wouldn't ramble too much today, so with that in mind, let's talk about next week. Next week is another weird one, Z0022 with 157 pieces. We're going back to Twilight Princess, but I doubt anyone could guess this at all. Anyway, you'll have to wait and see. Please leave me a comment down below about the Shadow Temple. I'd love to hear your feedback, ideas, suggestions, criticisms, joy, figure advice, anything. Just share what you thought down below. But in the meantime, I'll see you next week. Bye bye.